to achieve a national ceasefire. The deal will place all public institutions in northeast Syria under government control. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky meets with Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman ahead of talks between Ukrainian and US officials. Bin Salman underscores the kingdom's support for international efforts to resolve the European crisis and achieving peace. US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff plans a visit to Moscow to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin this week. This comes amidst Trump's efforts to reverse icy relations with Russia. After deadly clashes in Syria's Alawite region, the US and Germany have demanded accountability for hundreds of civilian killings. Behind closed doors, Syria coordinates with the US amid escalating violence in the region. The United Nations Security Council is to meet over Iran's growing stockpile of nuclear bomb-grade uranium. This comes amid ongoing worries over Iran's developing nuclear program. A US judge has said that Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency must make records public concerning his operations. US District Judge Christopher Cooper says the department has been run with unusual secrecy. At least 32 people are killed in two separate bus crashes in Mexico. The two crashes occur in the north and the south of the country, both happening in the space of 24 hours. The US stock market has lost over $4 trillion in value following President Donald Trump's comments about the possibility of a recession this year. The S&P dropped 2.7%, marking its lowest level since February. The Nasdaq 100 plunged 3.81%, its worst loss since September 2022. Tesla saw a significant drop, losing 15.43%. This market rout follows weeks of sharp declines fueled by concerns over Trump's shifting tariff policies and fears of a major economic shutdown. Asian markets are also feeling the impact, with Japan's Nikkei and Taiwan's TAIEX both dropping 2.5%. To discuss this further, we are joined by Rohan Gunaratne, International Affairs expert located in Singapore. Rohan, thank you very much for joining us. What can you tell us the reasons behind this fall in tariffs, both in the US and Asia, and why have Trump's imposed tariffs caused consequences for the United States instead of benefits?
Course of action has created uncertainty. It is something new the world has not yet witnessed. So in many ways, governments are very concerned. The private sector is even more concerned. So I personally believe that this uncertainty will prevail until there is some stability on the part of what Trump is going to do, because he has made certain decisions, he has changed some of his decisions. So in this period of uncertainty, we will see such developments. So what is important is for there to be a greater consultation within the United States on the US approach. It should be a decision, the decision making should be done not only by the president, but by a number of other experts. And if there is no such decision making, then of course these developments will continue, and there will be a global economic crisis. There will be a recession, there will be inflation, there will be so many challenges.
Rohan, what can you tell me about what a recession really means? How will this affect the average person in the US, in Asia, where these stock markets have crashed the most?
President Trump's victory, in fact, many believe that it will strengthen the United States. Still, many people believe that because he always says America first. But President Trump himself will have to understand that the stability and security of the United States is very much dependent on global stability and global security. Otherwise, what's going to happen is the innocent man on the street will continue to suffer, not only in the United States, but globally. And what is happening right now has generated so much of concern, generated so much of debate. And I believe that itself will drive now governments to work very closely with each other and also consult the United States in a very serious way to restore that stability and security. After all, economic prosperity is the biggest national security challenge. Below that is political stability, below that is social harmony. So I think the concern at this point is that these layers, social harmony, political stability, economic prosperity, for it to be preserved, there has to be greater consultation between leaders and between governments. Otherwise, the innocent man on the street will suffer.
Rohan Gunaratne, thank you very much for joining us. We move to some more news stories. The Kurdish-led US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces have signed a landmark deal with Syria's government to integrate their civilian and military institutions into the state's administration. Interim President Ahmed al-Shara and SDF commander Mazloum Abdi formalized the agreement in Damascus, while aiming to unify Syria after 14 years of conflict. The deal transfers key SDF-controlled border crossings, an airport and vital oil and gas fields in the eastern Syria to the Damascus administration. This agreement comes at a crucial moment as Shara faces unrest following the mass killings of Alawite minority members in western Syria. Implementation of the accord is set for the end of the year, though it remains unclear how the SDF's military operations will align with Syria's defense ministry. Abdi described the deal as a real opportunity to build a stable, inclusive Syria that reflects the aspirations of its people.
هذا الاتفاق وهو اتفاق ناجح جدا لأنه حقن دماء السوريين جميعا وأنها خطوة إيجابية بالطريق الصحيح.
President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine has met Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Jeddah amid Saudi Arabia's ongoing position as a key mediator of international peace efforts towards ending the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Riyadh has already mediated prisoner exchanges and hosted Moscow-Washington talks in the past, reflecting its bid on a ceasefire and establishing peace. As the US pursues progress on a ceasefire and a possible peace framework, Zelensky will not be present at Tuesday's session himself, but will send top officials. Under pressure from US President Donald Trump and with Russia stepping up its attacks, these negotiations may determine Ukraine's next move towards bringing an end to the war. At least 32 people have been killed in 2 different bus accidents in Mexico. In Oaxaca, a southern Mexican state, where a bus went off the road and overturned, killing 18 and hospitalizing 12. The authorities are trying to find out what led to the crash, which reportedly involved the supporters of the ruling party coming back from a political rally. Up in the north, in Durango, a horrific crash between a tractor-trailer and a Texas passenger bus killed 14 people and only 10 passengers survived. Fatal crashes on the roads are a serious problem in Mexico, with thousands killed yearly. A US federal judge has ruled that records from the Department of Government Efficiency created by President Donald Trump's administration and led by Elon Musk must be made public. Judge Christopher Cooper sided with the watchdog group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics, stating that Doge is likely subject to the Freedom of Information Act. This ruling pushes for more transparency regarding the department's role in mass federal layoffs and agency downsizing. The Trump administration had argued that Doge was exempt from a FOIA, but Judge Cooper ruled that the department exercises significant authority and operates with unusual secrecy. The report showed that Doge used encrypted communication and outside servers to carry out its work. This marks a key victory for advocates pushing for greater government transparency. The Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, is on a 2-day state visit from the 11th of March to the 12th of March to Mauritius on the invitation of his Mauritian counterpart. Modi received a ceremonial welcome in Mauritius. Prime Minister Modi posted on X thanking Mauritian Prime Minister for welcoming him at the airport. 200 dignitaries, including the Deputy Prime Minister, Chief Justice, Speaker, Foreign Minister, members of Parliament, MLAs, diplomats and religious leaders were present. During this visit, India and Mauritius will sign key agreements on trade, capacity, building and fighting cross-border financial crimes. Besides the Prime Minister Modi will meet the President, senior leaders of political parties. He will also interact with the Indian community and inaugurate a civil service college, a health centre built with India's help. An Indian Armed Forces contingent, an Indian Navy warship and a skydiving team will join Wednesday's celebrations. PM Modi has called Mauritius a key maritime neighbour and a gateway to Africa. He highlighted both the countries' shared history, culture and strong democratic values. India is one of Mauritius's largest trading partners, with Indian origin people making up 70% of Mauritius' population. Syria's Islamist-led government says that it has wrapped up a military operation against an uprising by loyalists of former President Bashar al-Assad. This comes amid growing international pressure for accountability following reports of mass civilian killings. The violence in Syria's coastal region is shaping up to be the biggest test yet for interim President Ahmed al-Shara, who seized power in December. A war monitor claims hundreds of civilians were killed in the Alawite villages as government forces cracked down on the insurgency. This insurrection was led by members of Assad's minority sect. Shara was once an al-Qaeda leader, has vowed to investigate the bloodshed and punish those who are responsible, even if it means targeting his allies. On Monday, the Syrian Defense Ministry announced the arrest of 2 individuals accused of committing violent acts against civilians. These were the first detentions made public since the operation ended. International criticism has started mounting, while US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has condemned the killings. Germany is urging Syria's transitional government to prevent further attacks and ensure justice for the victims. As the country struggles to emerge from 14 years of conflict, Shara's leadership faces intense scrutiny both at home and abroad.
نحن جينا حدادا على شهداء الأمن العام والجيش وحدادا على أرواح المدنيين اللي انقتلوا اللي انقتلوا بآخر أحداث صارت بالساحل وبالأرياف.
US President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff is set to visit Moscow this week. The trip aims to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin. Witkoff, who serves as Trump's Middle East envoy, has been instrumental in efforts to end the ongoing war in Ukraine. This follows a previous meeting between Witkoff and Putin last month, where he successfully secured the release of American teacher Mark Fogel from a Russian prison. Trump has repeatedly expressed interest in improving US-Russia relations, which have been tense under the Biden administration. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio will lead a delegation to Saudi Arabia to discuss Ukraine's stance in the ongoing war. The United Nations Security Council will meet behind closed doors on Wednesday to address growing concerns over Iran's growing stockpile of uranium, nearing weapons-grade levels. The meeting was requested by 6 council members, including the US, Britain and France. They aim to discuss Iran's failure to provide critical information to the UN nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, about undeclared nuclear material. Iran has denied seeking nuclear weapons but is rapidly increasing uranium enrichment to 60% purity, close to the 90% level needed for bombs. Western nations argue such high enrichment is necessary for civilian purposes. The 2015 nuclear deal with major powers, including the US, aimed to limit Iran's nuclear activities. Since the US withdrew from the agreement in 2018, Iran has resumed its nuclear expansion. Britain, France and Germany are prepared to push for the return of sanctions if Iran pursues nuclear weapons. A Guatemalan judge has sent journalist Jose Zamora back to jail. Zamora faces money laundering charges, which he calls political persecution. Judge Eric Garcia ordered his return to pre-trial detention after a higher court overturned his house arrest, following his previous 800-day jail stint. During the hearing, Garcia said he and his staff had received threats but did not give details. Zamora was convicted of money laundering in 2023 and sentenced to 6 years in prison, but an appeals court later overturned the conviction and set a new trial for 2025. His newspaper, El Periódico, investigated government corruption for over 30 years, and just before 2022 arrest, Zamora criticized then-President Alejandro Guatemala. Guatemala's Attorney General appointed Alejandro Guatemala, who is accused of corruption by the US, has led the case against Zamora. South Korea's acting president, Choi Sang-mok, has raised concerns about US President Donald Trump's America First policies targeting his country. Choi says discussions are underway between the US and South Korea on tariffs, energy and shipbuilding. A global tariff regime will take effect on April the 2nd, which could impose reciprocal tariffs on South Korea. Trump has threatened an all-out pressure over high tariffs on US goods. Choi emphasized that South Korea will respond calmly and flexibly to secure a mutually beneficial deal. Choi also commented on rising tensions at home, warning of potential violent protests ahead of a key ruling by the Constitutional Court on President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment. Authorities are preparing for the worst-case scenarios. Moldova and the French Development Agency signed a €30 million agreement to improve the energy efficiency of the country in order to decrease waste, cut costs and enhance energy independence. Announced after President Moïse Sandou's visit to Paris for talks with French President Emmanuel Macron, the agreement comes amid increased tensions with Russia. Moldova's pro-European authorities blame Moscow with orchestrating an energy crisis in order to destabilize the nation before elections. This a claim that Russia denies. Macron spoke out against increasingly Russian efforts of undermining the democracy of Moldova as Moldova pushes to join the European Union within 2030. US President Donald Trump plans to build metals refining facilities on Pentagon military bases. The move aims to boost domestic production of critical minerals and reduce reliance on China's supply chain. This decision is included in an executive order Trump is set to sign on Wednesday, following his promise to significantly boost US rare earth mineral production. Beijing currently processes the minerals relied on by fighter jets, submarines and other military equipment, making this a national security priority. The Pentagon would collaborate with other federal agencies to install these facilities on its bases, ensuring access to available land without community opposition. Trump also plans to appoint a critical minerals czar to coordinate these efforts. This decision comes amid concerns that China could restrict mineral efforts in retaliation for US tariffs. With the Pentagon controlling 30 million acres of land, the strategy avoids the need for further land purchases and keeps operations under military oversight. Pope Francis is no longer in immediate danger and is responding well to treatment, the Vatican said. The 88-year-old pontiff has been battling double pneumonia and has been in